In this video, I'll be explaining how your traumas are slowing down your spiritual progression and why this is happening. Before we get into this, I'd like to say that if you're trying to change yourself and your life in 2020 and beyond, I'd like to welcome you to subscribe to the channel and remember to hit the bell notification so you're notified every time I upload a new video. So without further ado, let's get into this: spiritual awakening and trauma. So who is this video aimed at? This video is for anyone who is on this journey of awakening and trying to progress spiritually but feels stuck. Maybe you haven't been able to really progress for a prolonged period of time. I feel and believe that's because there's some traumas that you haven't yet overcome and dealt with. And trauma is the ultimate limiting factor to how much progress you can make. And this isn't just for people who are trying to evolve spiritually, but even if you're just trying to live a better life. I believe it begins and ends with this. Once you get this bit right, I honestly feel like the rest of it's easier. This is like the limiting factor on your spiritual growth. And the spiritual path does tend to attract people who do have traumas and things that they're trying to overcome. Usually you've exhausted all of the options. The world doesn't really offer us good enough solutions for our problems. So we turn to the spiritual path. But the paradoxical thing is, the thing that you're actually trying to heal is your number one limiting factor as well. So how do I define trauma? Well, to me, it's anyone who experiences with any mental or emotional condition has experienced some trauma. Their symptoms are a result of that trauma. So if you have anxiety, depression, you get stressed out easy, maybe you get triggered emotionally by other people, or you have a very bad handle on your anger or any of your emotions, or maybe you have some addictive patterns. Anything that falls under this umbrella of kind of mental or emotional disturbance or illness, to me, that is a symptom of trauma. I know that sounds quite broad because a lot of people suffer with these conditions. Am I really saying all these people are traumatized? Potentially, yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. When it comes to trauma in of itself, again, I don't really clarify this in any particular way. The thing that happened that caused the trauma to me is irrelevant. What's relevant are the symptoms. So even if it's something that seems quite insignificant to someone else, if it impacted you, it impacted you. It doesn't really matter what the stimulus was. And I really try to move away from that. I don't like to define one thing as traumatic and another thing as not, because we all respond differently. So the key to thing to focus on is, what is the symptom? What are you trying to overcome? That is where the clue is. And really, before I get into explaining how trauma affects you, you cannot be an effective channel for consciousness if you're traumatized, because trauma, it affects your body, affects your nervous system. And you experiencing any of these symptoms I've talked about shows that you are not at peace in your body. When you're not at peace in your body, then that's a clue there's something wrong. Imagine when you're in your house, at home, you feel relatively safe. You don't have unwanted guests and visitors turning up all of the time. That's your space. It's probably one of the places you feel most safe is in your own house. This is how we should feel in our physical bodies. This is our vehicle. We shouldn't be suffering with emotional problems and anger and fear and whatever else people are suffering with. That's a massive clue that we're not at peace in our own vehicle, in our own home. And I know I do say a lot that you are not your body, and I believe that. But while we're having this human experience, this is your body. And you need to make that a peaceful home that you can reside in. Otherwise, you're going to keep struggling with these unwanted visitors and guests, which make your life much more difficult, which really slow down your spiritual progression as well and stop you from living a fulfilling life. So we need to start working with the body. That's really what I want to help you understand, how trauma impacts the body and affects your spiritual development. Okay, so in order to do this, I'm going to have to get into a little bit of science. I'll try and make it as easy to understand as I can, but I certainly recommend you go about and read and learn more about some of these ideas. Okay, so you're probably aware that we have a nervous system. Okay, this nervous system is really the foundation of our human body. It controls all of these automatic functions: blood flow, heart rate, digestion, our temperature, breathing. All of these things are automatically controlled by our nervous system. Now, trauma impacts you at the level of the nervous system. That's why it really is difficult to overcome, because it hits us on such a deep level. Now, this nervous system has two branches that we're concerned with. This is a sympathetic branch and a parasympathetic branch. The parasympathetic branch is when you are in rest and digest. That is your natural state. In that state, that is where we are fully ourselves and we can evolve spiritually at our fastest pace. That's when we're at peace, okay? Homeostasis. When you've had trauma, you have been knocked out of that natural parasympathetic state into a sympathetic state. Okay, sympathetic, S for stress. So you're living from this stress response. And we can get stuck in that stress response. In that stress response, you are secreting stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, which starts to break your body down, which suppresses your immune function, and it creates a lot of negative symptoms. Because that sympathetic branch is only experienced when you feel under threat. And you get stuck there because something that's happened in your past has made you feel threatened. Now you're stuck in this response and you can't break out. At that time, it was relevant. You had to go into that state because the sympathetic response is relevant. We do, from time to time, need to fight or flight. We do need to protect ourselves and run away, but we don't want to be living there all of the time. A byproduct of living there all of the time is all of these conditions I've just talked about. We're completely disorganized. Our nervous system is completely disorganized. And a symptom of disorganization is disorganized emotions and thoughts. So the reason we get stuck in that sympathetic response is because when this traumatic experience happened to you, there was an energetic kind of jolt, let's say. So imagine you were in an accident, God forbid, but at the moment of the accident, you would have a heightened sense of awareness. Your body would be energized, right? Now, that energy we experience gets trapped in the body, gets trapped in the nervous system, which keeps your nervous system out of whack, which keeps you functioning in that dysfunctional, well, not the dysfunctional, that keeps you functioning from the sympathetic branch, which, like I said, is just creating disorder in your whole body. You cannot get to the levels you're trying to get to in this state of being. We need to return back to the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest. And that's why there's so many spiritual exercises that are related to working with the body, which is really what I want to direct you toward, is all of these exercises like yoga, breathing exercises, pranayamas, kundalini yoga, there's kriya yoga, there's TRE, trauma releasing exercises. These are all ways that we can start to work with the body, begin to discharge that stuck energy and start to get comfortable and start to trust the parasympathetic state. Because we've been living in the sympathetic stress response for so long in this traumatized state, we trust it now, like it's just become our natural state. To let go of that and go back into the parasympathetic, the natural rest and digest, it's going to require some courage and trust because you're not used to living in that state. As much as you want to consciously, your subconscious is going to fight it. And the only way to get around that is by discharging and working with your body and helping your body to trust that parasympathetic state more. As you begin to reside there more and more, your nervous system begins to organize itself. You become more in alignment with yourself and you are able to access these higher levels of consciousness. Consciousness can only flow through you when you are really mind, body and soul. That's what we're talking about here, when you are fully aligned. Otherwise, you're just going to keep experiencing struggles. Even if you're going through like a dark night of the soul or something very, very difficult, I feel when you get your body right, the rest of the stuff is going to flow so much easier. The journey begins and ends with the body, so start to work with it. Trust me, I learned the hard way myself. Make this a part of your practice. Like a couple of times a week, do some yoga, do some breathing exercises. I have some of these techniques on my channel. Start to discharge that energy and start to come back to yourself. Allow that, become that channel for consciousness to flow through fully, and that's where you're really going to live the type of life that you want to live. Okay, so that is everything that I have to talk about on this subject. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about, hit me up in the comments because I'll be more than happy to try and answer them. Otherwise, if you did like the video, if you could please go ahead, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they need to hear the message, subscribe to the channel, remember to hit the bell notification, and until next time, remember to keep living free and being free.